Good morning. I hope that everyone's having a great day so far, and I appreciate your time for sitting in on this webinar. My name is Hideyuki Terashima, and I am an environmental geologist at the Illinois State Water Survey, where we manage our program, wateroperator.org. During today's webinar, I'll be introducing to you about wateroperator.org, what exactly the website is, and how this website is a useful tool to help water and wastewater professionals find resources on a specific topic. And for today, we're going to be focusing on wastewater infrastructure funding. Before I start, I wanted to quickly go over some housekeeping stuff. This webinar will be presented on the GoToWebinar platform. For those of you that have not used GoToWebinar before, you should see a console similar to what I have shown on this slide. There's a questions section where you'll be able to submit any questions you might have throughout the webinar, which we will review at the end. So please don't hesitate to ask any questions during the webinar and throughout the webinar. This webinar will also be recorded and will be uploaded to our wateroperator.org YouTube channel once the webinar is over. We have not applied for any operator credits, but we will be more than happy to offer you a certificate of attendance or help you complete any forms required by your certification body. If you are interested, please send us an email at info@wateroperator.org email address requesting a certificate of attendance after this webinar is over. Additionally, I will note that we will not be able to provide any certificates for watching the recording of the webinar once it's published on YouTube. So this will be the outline of this presentation today. I'll start off by introducing what exactly wateroperator.org is, while giving examples of what kind of website it is, what the services it offers, and the tools that operators, both water and wastewater, can use to further their knowledge on water management or water and wastewater management. I'll then highlight some of the publicly available resources that have been developed by various organizations and how you can find these resources, as well as similar resources through our website's tools. I've done similar presentations in the past, but we always focused on a specific topic and highlighted resources related to that specific topic. And again, for this presentation, I'll be highlighting resources related to wastewater infrastructure funding. Then finally, I'll briefly discuss some of the other features that you can also find on our site. So what is waterop.org? It's a website which we developed at the University of Illinois in collaboration with the Rural Community Assistance Partnership, RCAP, with funding from the US EPA. It serves as a clearinghouse of public available resources to help water and wastewater operators with a focus on smaller system operators. We have staff that scour the internet to find and collect various public available information and resources that we find are useful to operators and provide a means to search and access that information easier through our website. So rather than having to sift through, hundreds of pages of search results on Google, we made a platform to search for relevant resources to save you time. Also, you might find a useful resource through Google. For example, maybe you might enter wastewater treatment manual, and the top search results might be from organizations like WEF, which creates great manuals, but their manuals cost a decent amount of money. Or some of the resources you might find is free to access, but is hidden behind a membership wall, so you might have to sign up or register. There are a decent amount of resources like that, but everything you can find on our website is public available information, and anyone can access the information without having to provide any kind of information or have to pay to access. Additionally, if operators have trouble finding certain information or resources, they can always call us or email us, and we'll try to help you find that specific information they're looking for, or try to connect you with people with more technical knowledge that can help them. For example, our RCAP partners. So how do we find these resources and what exactly do we look for? We have a database of over 800 organizations, such as national organizations like EPA, AWWA, WEF, as well as individual state agencies, regional associations, and even vendors. Each of our staff visits their websites and look for any kind of information like events, like operator trainings, webinars, conferences, young professional meetings, even networking events. Pretty much any event which offers CEUs for operator or is free and useful for operators, we try to collect that information. For example, like many EPA webinars, they don't usually offer credits, but they're usually free and offer a lot of great information. Those are kind of information that we do like to highlight. We also look for public available resources such as fact sheets, reports, manuals, past conference presentations from organizations that host conferences, any kind of technical resource that can be helpful for operators. With again, focus on small system operators, we try to focus on those. So we've been searching and collecting these resources since 2009, and we currently have over 15,000 documents in our resource library. And we enter about 13,000 events, training events every year into our nationwide calendar. So this website was actually first called smallwatersupply.org, but we rebranded to wateropera.org around 2016. The website was originally developed for operators of rural communities where they may not have had the time to search for technical resources. Since in many rural communities, the operator running their facility may not even be their full-time operator and can have a different full-time job. And again, additionally, back then, there was still a lack of internet infrastructure providing high-speed internet to many rural areas. So we originally designed this website to help users save time by being able to search for, again, water and wastewater focused resources, be able to get a brief introduction of what that resource is so they can actually commit to downloading that specific maybe PDF document or a conference presentation before deciding that they actually want that resource. So after we collect these resources or data, we display that information on our calendar and our library tool on our website. So I just mentioned earlier, just a second ago about our nationwide calendar tool. It's meant to help operators save time from having to search through numerous organizations' website and find all the relevant events on a single calendar. Similarly, we collect the most useful public available resources and display them on our document library tool. Both the calendar and library tool utilize an extensive search functionality, so you can easily find the information you're looking for. There's multiple filters you can use so that you can narrow your search down to exactly the specific term that you or specific topics that you might be looking for. And I'll show screenshots of how to use those tools later in this presentation. And for each entry, we also make sure to provide a complete summary with the most important details. So for example, documents, we'll make sure to provide a short summary of the document, as well as, where was the document found? Why is this document useful for operators? And additional links for like the homepage of the host organization. And for your events, we make sure to give you a complete summary of the event, like again, what the event is on, how much it costs, how many CUs it offers, contact information if you want to reach out to the organization hosting the event, and much more information. And we always try to make sure to include a link to the actual organization's website to make sure to credit them. We try not to host any resources ourselves unless there are resources from organizations that are no longer active, but is still useful today. But we try to make sure to connect users to the host organization's website. In the past, we've heard from many operators that they found the Nationwide Calendar tool to be an excellent tool to help find events they never knew existed. And we've gotten calls and emails from operators saying, hey, I need X hours of credits by the end of the month. Can you help me find some online webinars that I can take from my office? And we've helped them navigate through our calendar tool and help them find opportunities. We've even had vendors reach out to us asking to have their events featured on our calendar. A lot of times these vendors don't seek pre-approval for their training, so we usually tell them, hey, if you want your trainings on our calendar, please get it pre-approved. And once you go through that process, we'll be more than happy to showcase them. And we've actually had several vendors go through the process to get their trainings approved, especially for Illinois operators or Illinois organizations, since we're based out of Illinois. They've been great working with us. So we do have a decent amount of good relationship with those training providers as well. So this is the front page of wateropera.org. I'll go into more details on how, again, to navigate our site later, but I just wanted to give you a preview of how it looks like. But if you wanted to access the web page now, you can enter the link in your browser or simply searching, wateropera.org and, or Google or any kind of search engine, and it should pop up at the very top search results. There's no login required. You can just get on there and start checking out the tools we offer. Again, no fees associated with it either. You can just get on there and start using it. The website is also mobile friendly, so if you're maybe out in the field and you need to find certain resources, our website should all of our tools on our website should function on those mobile devices. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we do deal with a wide range of topics, and every resource we do add to our database is tagged with a specific category or categories, which gets integrated into our search engine. Here's a list of the categories or filters that we do use to categorize events and documents, just to give you an idea of what kind of topics we find on our website. I'm also a big fan of making graphs and charts, so I kind of really want to include something visual on this slide. This chart basically shows the breakdown of the categories or topics covered from around 13,000 events, which we added during 2023. And the chart really highlights how many of the events we add do focus on those operation maintenance related topics, water and wastewater, generic water and wastewater treatment topics, certification and certification prep. But one of the categories we do have listed on here is financial management, which includes topics relevant for water and wastewater utilities, like searching for grants, funding opportunities, how do you budget your or your assets or your capital, and long-term financial planning. The list of categories and percentages shown here only accounts for the event side, but the documents library again do share the same categories. And the reason I focus on wastewater infrastructure funding for this webinar is because recently, the industry has been seeing an increase in the amount of funding offered to tackle some of the issues of aging wastewater infrastructure and to better protect public and environmental health, especially in those disadvantaged communities. So during this presentation, I'll be highlighting various funding programs that are eligible for publicly owned wastewater treatment plants to make critical infrastructure updates. Due to the number of state-specific or regional smaller funding programs, we won't be able to cover them all. I'll mostly be focusing on the larger federal programs, but I'll include additional resources which can help utilities search for additional funding opportunities. And finally, I will highlight some of the resources available to help utilities plan for and build a more sustainable infrastructure, which can help foster ideas that can be used to inspire utilities on potential infrastructure upgrade projects. Many of the resources highlighted today will come from EPA, as they provide majority of the funding available to water and wastewater utilities. But I will also feature resources from other organizations such as the Environmental Finance Center Network, EFCN, the Rural Community Assistance Corp, RCAC, which is one of RCAP's regional partners, and Urban Institute, which is a Washington, D.C. based think tank that focuses on driving changes in areas such as technology, climate, environmental justice, and more. But they have great resources focusing on those topics. Many of the wastewater compliance issues and violations can really stem from basically inadequate wastewater infrastructure. Many communities, especially small and rural, do struggle to keep their costs for maintaining their assets like pipes, pumps, and even their treatment systems. Without routine maintenance or upgrades, these systems can eventually fail, leading to catastrophic and environmental public health issues. However, managing wastewater systems can be complicated and is a challenging task for many small systems. The most recent 2022 Clean Water Infrastructure Needs Survey, hosted by the EPA, show that there is a need for over $600 billion from around 17,000 reported publicly owned treatment works to meet some of the water quality goals of the Clean Water Act. And this is a survey that's conducted every 4 years, so presumably we can expect EPA to be having another survey in 2026. Some of these needs or challenges experienced by these wastewater utilities that were reported do include aging infrastructure or leaking pipes. Many systems are old and are in need of repair or replacement of a lot of their equipment, even their infrastructure. Inflow and infiltration within the sewer system can also increase the burden on a treatment plant's capacity if sewer systems aren't maintained properly. Securing funding is another challenge commonly experienced by smaller or rural communities, since they may have difficulty raising capital or be able to even apply for some of these large-scale grants, especially for small systems. Population fluctuations such as rapid urbanization can also strain existing wastewater systems, while communities experiencing population decline can also lead to underutilization of a system. Keeping up and integrating new technologies is also limiting for many small system due to the costs associated with installing them, as well as the lack of operators with the technical knowledge to be able to manage those advanced systems. Strict environmental regulations can also require continuous infrastructure investment, which can be a financial burden on a municipality. Although we've seen an increase in initiatives offering financial or technical assistance to enhance our infrastructure, it's still common to read a news article about our country's deteriorating infrastructure, especially after major weather events. Increased rainfall can lead to sewage overflows, and this problem has been reported many times, especially in coastal communities where climate change impacts can be severe and can be seen physically by the amount of infrastructure damage that it can cause. So how can wastewater utilities rebuild, repair, or upgrade their infrastructure to mitigate these problems? Well, utilities need to take advantage of the funding opportunities available to them to maximize their ability to implement infrastructure upgrades. Many small systems are Although many small systems are open to apply for these opportunities, again, many have reported having trouble navigating the application process or meeting the eligibility requirements. So I hope that through this webinar today, I can highlight resources that will be able to help operators better understand the amount of funding available and how to navigate through the funding process for each opportunity. So what is wastewater infrastructure funding? Just to start off by at this very starting point, there are financial assistance programs commonly available through federal, state, or even regional organizations that provide financial resources to help wastewater utilities build, maintain, or even upgrade their wastewater infrastructure. The bipartisan infrastructure law, for example, provided more than $50 billion to help improve the country's drinking water, wastewater, stormwater infrastructure. There are other sources such as municipal bonds, private capitals, local taxes, but federal grants often offer low interest loans, which allows it to be more accessible to smaller systems or any water or wastewater system. These funding sources can be used for various infrastructure projects, which can enhance a wastewater treatment plant's ability to effectively serve its community. Examples of infrastructure projects can be, increasing treatment capacity in growing communities to, accommodate increased wastewater flow and population growth. Improving treatment efficiency can reduce operational costs and help achieve compliance easier and reduce violations. Reducing combined sewer overflows can lead to improved environmental public health, as well as enhance our source water quality. Enhancing resiliency can prepare utilities for extreme weather events, such as heavy rainfalls, which can impact the operation of a wastewater treatment plant. Energy efficiency initiatives or resource recovery projects can also reduce operating costs and enhance sustainability. And surprisingly, cybersecurity is another crucial part of the wastewater infrastructure that should be implemented or upgraded, as cyber attacks can impact the monitoring, operation, or even the communication devices of various equipment, which can lead to public health concerns. So what are some examples of funding that are available for wastewater infrastructure? Over the next 3 slides, I'll provide a quick overview of the funding programs available from various federal agencies, starting off with EPA's funding opportunities. The largest and most widely known on the wastewater side, at least, is the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, or the Clean Water SRF. This is a federal state partnership program that provides low-cost financing for a wide variety of water quality infrastructure projects. It started in 1987, but the program has financed over $172 billion in high priority water quality projects, with around $39 billion of that amount going to small communities. There are 11 eligible project categories under this grant, which include upgrading or repairing wastewater infrastructure, implementing energy efficient measures, enhancing stormwater management through gray or green infrastructure, water conservation or reuse, or even technical assistance such as developing an asset management plan, capital improvement plan, or even guidance itself on how to obtain financing through the Clean Water SRF, or other funding opportunities. Those that are interested should reach out to their state's Clean Water SRF program, as each state program may have their own guidelines for eligible project, as well as different eligibilities depending on the state. Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act, WIFIA, is another EPA loan program which provides long-term, low-cost loans for eligible water and wastewater infrastructure projects. These loans are intended for usually larger projects since they have a minimal project size requirements, which for larger communities, it's $20 million, and for smaller communities, it's $5 million. Projects eligible under this grant will be uh, will be applicable for the Clean Water SRF usually as well. However, projects must be for WIFIA must be creditworthy and they need to have a dedicated source of revenue, which is another burden that can impact smaller systems because a lot of times they might not have projects large enough to meet the eligibility criteria or have projects that might potentially be able to provide revenue enough to be able to pay for some large scale projects that even small systems do need. And for WIFIA, EPA will issue a notice of funding availability, and also they will request for letters of people that are interested. And if you are interested to apply for this program, you'll have to submit a letter of interest. And again, EPA will currently they're not accepting applications, I believe, but they will be sending out another notice of funding in the near future. I also wanted to touch on EPA's Closing America's Wastewater Access Gap, where through this program, EPA, USDA collaborated with states and tribes to help historically underserved community with failing septic systems or communities without existing wastewater infrastructure to identify and pursue federal funding opportunities to address their wastewater needs. The first initiative concluded in 2022, where 11 underserved communities were assisted, and they were provided with no-cost technical assistance. Examples of the TA that the community received include, assessing their community's wastewater needs, evaluating the feasibility of wastewater solutions, helping the municipalities conduct rate studies, and even identifying funding sources, as well as helping to complete the preliminary and engineering reports that may be required by some of these funding sources. EPA published individual case studies from those 11 communities, which highlights the partnerships and their roles involved with the project, the wastewater treatment assessment that was conducted, benefits of investing in wastewater infrastructure, the financing options utilized from each community, and the roadmap for their project implementation. They're very detailed reports. Each of them are at least 20 pages long, and they do highlight again how this technical assistance helped their communities. EPA now has expanded this initiative to provide technical assistance to 150 additional communities across rural America, and they are currently accepting requests through their Water TA water request forum. And currently there is no deadline to apply, but I will show you a fact sheet as well as an example of the case studies later in the slide just to give you an idea of where you can find this information. There are also a variety of non-EPA funding sources, 3 which are highlighted on the slide. The first funding option is administered by the USDA or through the Rural Development and through their Rural Development Water and Environmental programs. These programs, which I have 4 listed, can provide loans or grants for wastewater infrastructure projects for rural communities. The first is the Emergency Community Water Assistance Grant, which provides financial assistance to help eligible rural communities prepare for or recover from emergencies. Funds from that program can be used to construct or repair treatment systems, repair leaks, extending sewer lines, and much more that can help them be more resilient. The Water and Waste Disposal Loan and Grant Program provides funding for reliable sanitary sewage disposal to many rural communities. Funds can be used to finance construction or improvement of a wastewater infrastructure. The Special Evaluation Assistance for Rural Communities and Households programs also provides funding to distressed rural communities for pre-development feasibility studies, design and technical assistance on proposed wastewater infrastructure projects. And the last program I have listed on here from USDA is the Revolving Funds for Financing Water and Wastewater Projects, which provides funding to qualified nonprofits to develop a revolving loan fund, which can provide financing to extend and improve wastewater infrastructure in many rural areas. HUD, or the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, also has several funding programs applicable for water and wastewater infrastructure projects to better prepare for or respond to disasters. The Community Development Block Grants can be used to purchase, construct, or fix public facilities such as wastewater systems to help develop a more viable urban community. This funding can be used can be provided either directly to they title them as entitlement communities, which are cities with population of at least 50,000 or more, or to uh, states to be distributed to non-entitlement communities or smaller communities, so communities less than 50,000. They also have the disaster recovery grants, which can be used for disaster relief and recovery from presidentially declared disasters. Similarly, for communities impacted by recent disasters, the mitigation grants can be used to carry out projects to mitigate disaster risks and increase resilience from future disasters. HUD also offers the Section 108 Loan Guarantee Program, which provides CDBG recipients, or the Community Development Block Grants, the ability to leverage their annual grant allocations to access low-cost financing for infrastructure projects. FEMA also has several infrastructure funding opportunities, such as the Public Assistance Grant Program, which is one of their largest programs. The program provides funding to help communities restore infrastructure affected by federally declared incidents or disasters. This funding can also be used as a cost-effective hazard mitigation measure for disaster-impacted facilities. Additional FEMA programs include Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities, BRIC, which is a relatively new program that provides grants to identify mitigation actions and improvement projects that reduce risks posed by natural hazards. The Hazard Mitigation Grant Program provides funds to states and public utilities to implement cost-effective and long-term mitigation measures following a major disaster declaration. And the Flood Mitigation Assistant, as you can tell, or as you can imagine, provides grants to assist with planning and implementing flood mitigation projects that can also support wastewater infrastructure. So these are some of the more major federal funding sources that I just wanted to cover. There are a lot more funding opportunities that are available at the federal, state, or even local level. But again, it will take some time to have to go through all of them, especially if we start looking at funding available for tribal systems. So for now, I'll stop here and we'll go over some of the resources that are available to help you find more information about these funding opportunities that we went over, as well as additional ones, since I just gave a decent amount of information dump here. I will highlight fact sheets as well as case studies that will go deeper into the funding opportunities that I mentioned, so you can better understand how those funding opportunities can help you out or help wastewater utilities. So to start off, I wanted to cover resources to help utilities better understand the federal programs I highlighted in the previous slides. So EPA has published various fact sheets, reports, and webinars aimed at helping wastewater utilities better understand how the Clean Water SRF works and whether they would be eligible or whether utilities would be eligible for funding for certain infrastructure projects. Many of these resources show how the Clean Water SRF can be used for wastewater infrastructure projects with examples or case studies from various states. So the first resource featured on this slide is a two-page fact sheet, which demonstrates how the Clean Water SRF provides financial assistance to eligible projects that again aims to protect public health and help protect water quality. The fact sheet itself includes information on how the funding program works, what entities will be eligible to receive assistance, the 11 categories or types of projects that they deem eligible to receive assistance, steps for getting a project funded, and even how to find a source of repayment. Since certain infrastructure project may be critical but not help produce revenue, it is important for borrowers to have a means of loan repayment, which may include wastewater user charges, local state taxes, recreational fees, and other sources. The fact sheet itself does list several of those repayment options, which might give smaller systems a better idea of how they may be able to pay for some of the projects that might get funded through the Clean Water SRF. The fact sheet also includes two case studies of successful Clean Water SRF projects from Chesterton, Indiana, and Wilmington, Delaware. Chesterton was experiencing difficulties managing their wet weather flow, which was damaging their infrastructure and impacting their local water quality. So in 2013, the city received a $10 million loan from the Indiana's Clean Water SRF program to finance the construction of a 1.2 million gallon wet weather storage tank and to upgrade the location of the treatment plant to better manage their wet weather flow. And compared to using a conventional sewage revenue bond, the city was able to save $2.7 million over the 20-year loan period. With the support from communities striving to reduce climate impacts through wastewater management, the city of Wilmington was able to receive a $36 million loan to construct a renewable energy biosolids facility at their wastewater treatment plant to capture and repurpose methane gas generated at the facility or through the wastewater digesters, as well as the adjacent landfill, which was actually enough to be able to power their plant for per day. And excess heat generated is also being repurposed to operate their new thermal sludge dryer, which helped to reduce the amount of hauled waste from their facility by 75%. EPA also has published a 27-page guide which looks at various projects that would be eligible to receive clean water SRF assistance. The resource is organized into the 11 clean water SRF project categories, and examples of eligible projects are organized into a table shown on the right screenshot of the slide. Each of those 11 categories are even expanded into subcategories to cover a wide range of projects that would fall under this main category. So for example, for centralized wastewater treatment, which is one of the 11 project categories, eligible projects are broken up into different groups, including primary and secondary treatment, advanced treatment, sewer systems, CSO correction, climate resilience, and security. Projects that fall under primary and secondary treatment might include, clarifiers, or replacing clarifiers, upgrading treatment systems, which projects, while projects under climate resiliency may include, procuring backup generators, flood mitigation measures, or, even regionalization. Each project category also includes information on which entities would qualify for assistance under the specific category. So for centralized wastewater treatment projects, assistance could be provided to any municipality that owns a publicly owned treatment works, or any municipality that manages wet weather flows, or even qualified nonprofits which assist owners and operators of small or medium-sized POTWs. So this guide, as well as the first fact sheet, should be able to provide enough information to determine whether a municipality will qualify for clean water SRF funding, and for what kind of projects that funding can be utilized for. Additional fact sheets are also available from EPA showing how the clean water SRF can be used for a variety of projects associated with wastewater infrastructure. The two resources highlighted on the slide demonstrate how the clean water SRF can fund eligible source water protection projects, as well as funding disadvantaged communities. So implementing proper source water protection not only protects our nation's vital potable water sources, but also helps to reduce strain on drinking water treatment systems by better managing potential sources of contamination and preventing them from entering the drinking water system, which eliminates the need for the utility to even make costly upgrades if their source water protection plan is well designed. Clean water SRF financing can be used for many types of source water protection projects, including both gray and green infrastructure. Additional eligible projects include stormwater management, developing and updating a source water protection plan, providing outreach and education materials, and even repairing and replacing aging on-site decentralized wastewater systems like septic tanks that can impact source waters. The fact sheet also includes loan repayment sources such as utilizing stormwater utility fees, recreational fees, and other potential sources. And again, many of these stormwater projects generally don't provide revenue, so finding a source of repayment might be challenging, but hopefully the listed examples can help utilities think of better innovative ways to get their projects funded. Recent efforts for funding and assisting disadvantaged communities has been increasing, which is fantastic. EPA is fully aware that there are additional infrastructure challenges for many smaller and disadvantaged communities, since they generally face difficulties financing, or even operating and maintaining their infrastructure assets. So EPA believes that the flexibility of the clean water SRF programs are ideal solutions to provide relief to those disadvantaged communities that need the assistance the most. The second fact sheet shown on here is a 2-page EPA fact sheet, which highlights the variety of ways states can use the clean water SRF to provide assistance to these disadvantaged communities. Excuse me. These may include flexible financing terms, additional subsidizations, technical assistance, or even through funding partnerships. The fact sheet also includes two case studies from two smaller communities in Idaho and West Virginia. So the city of Hagerman, Idaho, which has a population of, I believe, less than 1,000, requested a $10 million upgrade to their wastewater infrastructure. This, however, would have increased the user fees to $115 per user, which is a decent amount, or which is a lot. But with the help of engineering staff from the state DQ and other federal and funding sources, the city was able to reduce the cost to 7.8 million, which resulted in a more manageable monthly user fee of $57. Crown, West Virginia is another small community which have historically had failing septic systems which were in dire need of repair. Due to the remoteness of the area, centralized wastewater treatment was not a viable option, and an on-site wastewater management solution was deemed necessary. So through the Clean Water SRF, the community was able to receive a $1.57 million grant to install an innovative on-site wastewater system capable of meeting the community's wastewater needs. Maintaining infrastructure upgrades to ensure wastewater infrastructure resilience during variable weather events are also crucial to maintain operation during these disruptive events. Not only is it important to replace aging infrastructure, but it's also important to ensure that infrastructure assets and communities are resilient to these weather events. EPA has published a 5-page fact sheet which goes over how the Clean Water SRF can be used for a wide range of resiliency projects, which can help prevent interruptions in collection systems during floods or even natural disasters, and helps to maintain the operation of the treatment plant during these events, and even enhance the community's resilience through enhanced stormwater management, or help conserve local water supplies through water reuse and conservation, or water conservation, especially during droughts. The fact sheet also includes several case studies from New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island, and Oklahoma, which outlines examples of resiliency upgrades using the Clean Water SRF. One example features how the South Monmouth Regional Sewerage Authority's wastewater treatment plant in New Jersey, which serves coastal communities, were able to obtain a SRF fund as an advance for FEMA assistance to build 3 pump stations, 2 which are mobile, to help mitigate the risks of the treatment plant flooding during extreme weather events like a 100-year flood. Some other examples from New York include how the city recovered from some of the recent hurricanes that they've experienced, or other weather events they experienced. Droughts are another extreme weather events which can have greater impacts than floods, since droughts can increase the risks of wildfires, stress potable water supplies, and even have a negative effect on local economies. Droughts can also result in significant water supply and quality challenges for communities and their wastewater systems, as water conservation can lead to declining wastewater flow, which can lead to increased concentration of salts or other organic contaminants from entering or to enter a wastewater influent. The second fact sheet shown here specifically focuses on droughts and highlights how the Clean Water SRF can provide low-cost financing for activities to address and promote drought resiliency. So drought resiliency projects can include assessing a wastewater system's vulnerability to drought impacts, water conservation projects that reduce the wastewater system's capacity, or water reuse projects that recycle wastewater. The fact sheet also includes 2 case studies on how communities are using Clean Water SRF to fund drought resiliency projects. One of them highlights how the Orange County Water District in California received $182 million to finance the completion of a groundwater replenishment project, which injects high quality treated wastewater into a recharge basin, where it naturally percolates into the utility's groundwater basin. Another case study from the city of Safford, Arizona, shows how the drought impacted city received a $3 million loan to install a reclaimed water pipeline, which transports reclaimed water from their wastewater treatment plant to their county fairgrounds to be used for irrigation purposes. Continuing with the infrastructure resiliency focused resources, the next 2 Clean Water SRF resources from EPA will cover wildfire resiliency and cybersecurity preparedness. So the first resource shown on the slide is a 5-page fact sheet which highlights how the Clean Water SRF can provide financial assistance to wastewater utilities preparing for or have been impacted from wildfire incidents. Over the past decade, there have been an increase in the number of wildfire incidents reported throughout the country, and the amount of infrastructure damaged by them have been significant, to say. Wildfires can regularly damage infrastructure such as physical treatment plants, sewer systems, remote sites, equipment, even roads that lead to access points or to the municipality itself. Wildfires are also unpredictable, and unprepared utilities can end up taking longer time to recover from wildfire damages. Since the Clean Water SRF can support infrastructure resiliency, there are various wildfire projects listed under the fact sheet that are considered eligible projects. Some of these include, rebuilding physical infrastructure, even relocating a treatment plant to a safer location, forest thinning, constructing artificial barriers, and even emergency preparedness guidance. One of the case studies shown on or featured on the fact sheet is from Flagstaff, Arizona, where they utilize Clean Water SRF funding to implement fire prevention measures. Where after the city experienced a wildfire event in 2010, the city voters actually supported a bond measure to fund a large-scale forest thinning project, which later ended up receiving $6 million in Clean Water SRF funding as additional funding. This was the first time the city considered including a natural infrastructure project of this kind in their capital improvement plan and in their water infrastructure budget. So that might be another method that a lot of utilities that might be in a wildfire-prone area to implement it within their emergency response plan or capital improvement plan. Cybersecurity is another topic that's becoming much more critical or important as water and wastewater utilities that heavily rely on information technology systems and operation technology systems are getting those equipment that are connected more to the cloud or the internet. Malicious activities can disrupt operation and can cause bigger problems. The second fact sheet details how the Clean Water SRF can be used to fund cybersecurity focused projects such as completing vulnerability assessments or even emergency response plans or financing equipment and technology upgrades which can help deter or reduce vulnerabilities that systems may encounter. I also wanted to include this 46-page EPA guide, which looks at several types of financial assistance options available through the Clean Water SRF programs, which can be used to fund non-traditional projects. So non-traditional projects are projects that go beyond conventional wastewater infrastructure like non-point source or green infrastructure projects. As mentioned before, these non-traditional projects tend to lack revenue stream, are smaller in scale, and have state restrictions, which may lower their rank on a state's priority list. Luckily, states do have innovative funding solutions or financial programs, which have resulted in various options for funding non-traditional projects, many of which are listed on this guide. It provides a detailed overview of each type of assistance available through the Clean Water SRF. So these include loans, direct loans, bonds, credit enhancements, local debt obligations, and much more. Each of these assistance types are also provided with state examples, which showcase how these assistance options have been used successfully. One example included shows how the Delaware Clean Water SRF program issued a direct loan to a privately owned wastewater treatment system since the facility discharged into one of the estuaries listed in the Section 230 National Estuary List, which allowed the private wastewater treatment system to be able to apply for Clean Water SRF funding. Another example shows how the intermunicipal lending can be utilized to help other agencies take advantage of grant programs. So the Missouri Clean Water SRF actually provided a $1 million loan to the Missouri Association Council of Governments so that they can fund the Missouri On-Site Wastewater Improvement Grant Loan Program, which was able to provide financing for homeowners to repair or replace on-site systems. So even if your municipality has non-traditional project, it's worth reaching out to your state Clean Water SRF program to see how it could potentially get funded through these innovative financing options. Now we'll be moving on to highlighting EPA resources to help you better understand how the WIFIA works. This first resource shown is the one-page fact sheet providing an overview of the program, It outlines the types of infrastructure projects that can be funded through WIFIA. It could be development and implementation of wastewater treatment facilities or sewer system, energy efficiency projects, or even to acquire property that might be vital for a project to mitigate environmental impacts resulting from it, or because that specific land is required for that project. Project eligibility is pretty flexible, just like the Clean Water SRF. But again, there are this funding is meant for larger projects since they do have a project size minimum of, again, 5 million for small systems and 20 million for larger systems. And these projects also have to be creditworthy, as well as requires a repayment plan to be outlined in the loan application, which again might dissuade smaller systems. But again, EPA also has a more comprehensive 104-page handbook, which outlines more of the requirements and details to help borrowers to stay in compliance with the program rules. The handbook does cover the 11 sections. The handbook covers 11 sections covering the loan process, what to do when a project is selected and approved, and much more. There's also additional resources in the appendices, which outline, again, program selection criteria, compliance requirements, tips for submitting a letter of intent, and other helpful resources. EPA also has 2 WIFIA fact sheets that shows how borrowers can take advantage of some of the beneficial program features. So the first 2 fact sheet outlines how the WIFIA program can finance multiple eligible projects through a single loan, which can give borrowers the flexibility to finance a number of smaller projects that would not meet the project minimum cost requirements, as long as those projects serve a common purpose. The fact sheet also includes a case study from Decatur, Georgia, where they received a $265 million loan to replace a portion of their distribution system, but while rehabilitating a major portion of their sewer system. So they were able to combine those 2 projects into a single loan, since again, it serves a similar purpose and the work is pretty similar. Cortland, New York is another municipality that was able to receive a $60 million loan to replace their aging wastewater, water, and stormwater drainage system, which gave this municipality, which this option gives smaller systems a chance to be able to apply for the WIFIA loans by able to combine those smaller projects into one. In limited circumstances, the program also allows its borrower to lower their loan interest rates one time, which can help utilities save a lot of money, especially in 2020 when interest rates dropped significantly. The WIFIA program noticed that and reduced their interest rates to help municipalities that may be burdened by COVID-19. Lowering rates can also help borrowers divert extra capital towards operational repair or even workforce needs. So there are these benefits for having the opportunity to lower their interest rates. Next up are resources to help better understand the Closing America's Wastewater Access Gap program. As I mentioned earlier, the program did have a pilot initiative in 2022 where 11 underserved communities were able to receive technical assistance to help identify financial options to improve their wastewater infrastructure. Right now, the initiative has been expanded to include 150 additional disadvantaged communities. EPA has a 1-page fact sheet which outlines this initiative's expansion, where it provides information about the program, types of technical assistance offered, as well as information on how to request that assistance. EPA also published the individual reports for the 11 communities which received the initial technical assistance. Each report provides a background of the communities, why they requested technical assistance, the cost or operational cost comparison of different wastewater treatment options, and compares the various funding options that were suggested for that community. The report also highlights the benefits of investing in their wastewater infrastructure, how they plan to sustain the investment in the future, the partners and roles involved, and even a roadmap for the project implementation. Each report provides detailed information to see how helpful and comprehensive this technical assistance offers. One of the reports, which I include in the screenshot, shows how the 3 cities in Harlan County, Kentucky, that shares common city boundaries, were able to get together and explore solutions to meet their community's wastewater needs, since each of those communities have individual wastewater systems, but a lot of them have aging infrastructure and have had violations in the past. So they compared whether having a single wastewater treatment plant was a better solution, with where they can divert all their financing to upgrade that specific system. The next few resources I will cover will be focused on non-EPA federal funding programs, starting off with HUD and USDA funding resources. One of the more useful resources I found actually came from EPA's federal funding for water and wastewater utilities and natural disasters page, where they consolidated a list of federal funding opportunities from each agency applicable for wastewater project into a single page. So it's easier to compare the programs that each agency offers. The HUD page specifically, which the top screenshot shows, provides an overview of the 4 programs HUD operates, again, to support wastewater systems for disasters and mitigation, as well as the community development block program, or the block grant, which provides funding to eligible water and wastewater projects. It details the funding eligibility, the types of projects it can fund, and where they can. And it also includes links directly to the funding to HUD's program page, so you can actually look for more information as well as apply for that loans directly on their site. EPA also has a similar page for USDA's water grants, which lists details for the 4 funding opportunities that they have for rural water and wastewater facilities. The programs listed include details on, how the funding can be used for those various projects, including emergency response and preparedness, building a new wastewater infrastructure, pre-development feasibility studies, and other technical systems, and much more. EPA additionally has 2 web pages highlighting funding opportunities through FEMA on the same program webpage. The first page shown at the top lists the 3 FEMA programs available through their hazard mitigation assistance programs. Each program is provided with a description of how each grant can be utilized, eligible grantees, the type of funding offered, and much more. The 3 funding programs shown here are intended to help utilities prepare for disasters rather than recover from disasters. All 3 grants are competitive, and either is provided through a yearly national competition or competed within the state. Information such as this and links to USDA's or to FEMA's program pages are also included. EPA also has a dedicated page for FEMA's the web page for the FEMA also has a web page for the public assistance grant program, which is another FEMA grant program where they provide water and wastewater infrastructure funding to help water or wastewater utilities that have been impacted by emergencies in the past to be able to utilize funding to upgrade their facility to stay more resilient. The page does include information about how the projects that are eligible, how to apply through the grant program, as well as additional information like who they can contact, as well as where they can go to get more information. The page also includes 2 fact sheets relevant for water and wastewater operators related to the public assistance grant program. The first fact sheet is the public assistance for water and wastewater utilities in emergencies and disaster, which details the eligibility of water and wastewater utilities for disaster funds under the PA program. It also lists eligible works, again, steps to apply for the grant, and even frequently asked questions from water and wastewater utilities. The second fact sheet includes a brief overview of the lessons learned from water and wastewater utilities, which were able to receive funding through the PA program. Some of these tips include, recording the existing condition of a facility prior to disaster, or incorporating an APA process as part of their emergency response plan, and more. So incorporating these kind of emergency response funding within an emergency response plan may help utilities become more prepared when a disaster happens, or to be better prepared for disaster by utilizing these funding sources to upgrade their infrastructure. So those were the resources specific to the funding programs I covered today. Again, there are much more opportunities like energy efficiency grants, water resource recovery grants, green infrastructure funding, even environmental justice grants that I can't cover today. But the next few resources should be able to help utilities be able to locate and find more information about these grants. So the first resource shown on this slide is the funding sources by state or territory tool provided by EFCN. It's on their website, but it's a interactive mapping tool or interactive map, which users can use to identify water and wastewater infrastructure funding sources within a specific state. So on the map, when you select a state, a new window will open up showing a PDF with tables listing current funding opportunities with information on how the funds can be used, where and how to apply, as well as contact information to funding program managers. EPA also manages a water finance clearinghouse, which is an online clearinghouse for information on funding opportunities applicable for drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater infrastructure. Some of the resources searchable include reports, case studies, as well as webinar recordings. The clearinghouse has two searchable databases, one which focuses on funds and one that focuses on the resources. So a funding library contains roughly 1,000 funding sources with details about the program. And the resource library includes around 753 resources from various organizations, even states, focusing on funding resources to help utilities be able to apply for that specific funding. It's a pretty extensive library with a lot of information on there, which I would suggest checking to see if you're looking for more unique funding opportunities. For utilities that may be considering infrastructure upgrades or projects but are not sure where to start, I've included resources which can provide guidance on how to start building a sustainable infrastructure. The first resource comes from the Urban Institute and is a 24-page report, which highlights how wastewater infrastructure is a necessary foundation for rural economic development. The report highlights how long-term neglect of wastewater infrastructure can have a negative impact for economic sustainability, since inadequate system capacity and infrastructure degradation can hinder business development and expansion opportunity, especially in rural areas. The case study was conducted. They feature a case study which was conducted in a small town in the Mississippi Delta region, which decided to upgrade their failing public wastewater infrastructure. The study aimed to assess the role of wastewater services in rural economic development, the challenges resulting from aging wastewater infrastructure for rural communities, and the barriers for maintaining or upgrading rural infrastructure. The next resource listed on the slide is the Sustainable Infrastructure for Small Systems Public Services, a planning and resource guide from RCAC. It's a 104-page planning guide, which is intended for smaller to medium-sized systems to integrate green elements into their facilities and projects. So by using this guide, utilities will be able to identify specific actions or projects that can be taken to promote sustainability. They have 3 chapters, one on water conservation, one on energy efficiency, and one on renewable energy sources. For each chapter, they include informational material, worksheets that users can use to assess their system based on the topic of that chapter, as well as case studies that provide that highlight sustainable strategies which have been implemented. EPA also has 2 guides to help utilities plan for sustainability. The first is the 75-page handbook, which utilities can use to enhance their planning process to ensure that water infrastructure investments are cost-effective over their life cycle, resource efficient, and support community goals. The handbook focuses on 4 core elements: establishing sustainability goals, establishing measurable objectives for each sustainability goal, and identifying strategies for meeting those objectives, setting sustainability evaluation criteria to analyze a range of infrastructure projects that might be applicable, and implementing a financial strategy so that all infrastructure are sufficiently funded. So for example, a goal can be for a wastewater utility could be to reduce their energy use so that it's more consistent with their community's energy efficiency program. For this objective, or for this goal, the objectives could be to reduce energy usage by 25% within the next 5 years. Since they have a baseline that they can use to compare their progress, which they can measure before they start the projects, that can also help with comparing track how well their project is going. For alternative analysis approaches, utilities can evaluate all their planned projects and compare their overall life cycle energy costs to their goal to assess whether they have the ability to meet those energy reduction goals. And for financial stability, utility revenue and grants can be used to ensure sustainable infrastructure or sustainable financing for new projects, taking advantage of the lower energy costs. So this method can help provide a solid foundation for planning process towards certain sustainability projects, and really helps utilities understand which projects should be prioritized the most. EPA also has published a 52-page supplement guide that expands on the alternative analysis step from the first guide, since that was a little bit confusing to me too, but it provides more detailed guidance on the method to help analyze an alternative analysis or an alternative projects to compare how the original sustainability project will impact their utility. Um, and the guide will help users establish metrics and a scale similar to the screenshot shown on this on the slide that shows the alternative approaches based on certain criterias and how it can be easily compared to identify the most sustainable approach. Since just reading text and documents can get confusing, I also wanted to highlight several videos or webinar recordings which covers wastewater infrastructure funding, such as the Clean Water SRF. EPA has a series of Clean Water SRF webinars which features professionals from around the country sharing their expertise on a range of topics related to the funding program. They have 6 webinar recordings currently, which cover topics such as basic introduction to the Clean Water SRF, how the Clean Water SRF can be used as a source of financing wastewater utilities, asset management and planning effort, and capital investments, how the Clean Water SRF can be used to fund land conservation and restoration projects, how to create innovative partnership and financing mechanisms to fund decentralized wastewater systems, how to fund green infrastructure and urban forestry projects to reduce combined sewage flooding problems, and how the Clean Water SRF is funding non-traditional projects such as tree planting or tree thinning and land acquisition for water quality protection. The second resource is a 80-minute webinar recording from EPA, which features members of the Green Infrastructure Federal Collaborative, which include members from EPA, USDA, HUD, FEMA, NOAA, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and even the U.S. Economic Development Administration. And this webinar features representatives from each organization where they highlight their respective funding and technical assistance opportunities that help to push forward the implementation of green infrastructure and nature-based solutions. A lot of the funding sources mentioned throughout this webinar were similar funding sources mentioned in today's in this presentation. So if you're looking for more information or want to hear from a person directly from the organization, this is a great webinar, which again highlights those funding opportunities in a very short format. EFCN also has 13 webinar recordings from their 2023 monthly Clean Water SRF webinar series, which was intended to help wastewater utilities better understand the funding process. Recordings cover topics such as what the Clean Water SRF is, how small systems can utilize Clean Water SRF funding, economics of low interest loans, projects which are eligible for funding, steps for applying for the loan, how states specifically prioritize projects, and how to manage a grant after it's been awarded, as well as how the SRF and WIFIA programs can work together to support projects together. EFCN also has a webinar hosted by the Environmental Finance Center at Syracuse University, which featured 2 EPA experts sharing insights and essential information about the WIFIA program. The webinar provides a comprehensive overview, eligible water and wastewater projects with examples of how the funding has benefited projects from small to large, information on the loan application process, steps to getting a project funded or approved, and the periodic project monitoring guidelines, which are required under the grant program, helping viewers to better be informed about the funding program itself in whole. I would definitely recommend utilities explore these options as well as take advantage of the technical assistance opportunities from these federal programs to better understand which infrastructure funding is the best for you. So now that I've introduced those resources, I'll give you a tour of our website and guide you through how you can find some of the resources that we covered today. So once again, this is our homepage, and you can navigate through our website from our main menu bar at the top. If you're looking to find resources like fact sheets or case studies or reports, you can hover your cursor over the resource library menu, which will then give you an additional drop-down menu. From there, you can select document search listed under the search for documents section, which will take you to our document library page. Once you get to the search for documents page, you'll see a search module with a drop-down and keyword filter text block. If you click on the drop-down option, it will ask you to select a specific filter, which will be used to populate the library. The 4 filters that you can choose are categories, which are series of water and wastewater related categories I showed earlier in the pie chart. You can also search. You can search using type, which represents the type of resources that you're looking for. So fact sheets, manuals, videos, presentations. The state filter will be used to search for state-specific resources, such as resources developed by state primacy agencies or maybe state-specific organizations. And finally, host, which would be the host organization, which is the organization that developed the resource or is hosting it. So let's say you're looking for more documents geared towards wastewater infrastructure funding. Well, you can click on category, which will then produce a list of water and wastewater related category as shown on the slide. If you scroll through, you'll see that financial management as a existing category. Now, if you select that and press retrieve documents, it'll start populating the resources to help populate resources specific to helping water and wastewater utilities develop financial capacity right under the search module. Resources on finding funding will also fall under this category. And as shown on here, the search results have been populated, and it'll also give you the number of total records of documents we have related to that category. And in this case, we have close to 1,800 resources, which is a little bit too much to go through. Since it indicates showing pages 1 of 179, I will note that the search tool will only show 10 search results per page. You can jump through different pages using the next page or previous page option shown on the right side of the total records number. So in this case, we can refine our search even more by adding another filter. If you look at the search module, there's a second drop-down menu now where you can select an additional filter. For this example, let's say you're looking for US EPA's various funding related resources. You can now select host in the second filter option, which will then give you a list of organizations which have financial management related resources. You might notice that when you use the second filter option, the drop-down option may produce significantly less entries than if you're using that filter by itself as the original filter. Since this is using a nested filter function, the second and third filter option does take into account of the previous filters to more efficiently provide users with search results. Now you can scroll down and you can with search. So now that you have this search result 330, we can tell that there's 337 search results. That's still a decent amount to go through. So again, we can refine our search even more. In this case, maybe let's say we're looking for specific resources from US EPA, in which case we can now select another filter, host, where it will produce a list of hosts or organizations, again, that have that specific document. And if we select US EPA from the drop-down menu and retrieve documents again, that will refine our search even more. Now to refine our search even more, you can add a third filter of either resource type or state. So if you know the type of resource you're looking for, such as fact sheets, guidebooks, or video recordings, you can select the type filter to refine your search even more. Or if you're looking for state-specific resources like maybe case studies conducted in certain states, you can choose the state filter. If there are certain search criteria not shown on here, you can search using the keyword filter as well. So for this example, let's say we're looking for fact sheets, as that's probably the quickest way to get information. We can then add a third drop-down filter, select fact sheet as the type, and it will update your search results to only fact sheets. And in this case, we are down to 104 search results. Once you decide that the search result is indeed the resource you're looking for, you can go ahead and click on that link, which should open the resource directly from the host. If there are terms you want to use to search that don't really align with any of the filter criteria, you can also use the keyword filter to the right. So let's say we want to see clean water SRF specific resources. Then we can enter the term clean water SRF, or its abbreviation, which I will use, which should then refine our search to results that is just relevant to the clean water SRF program. And if I do that, we have now refined our search to just 14 search results, and these are all specifically related to clean water SRF or mentions it within the resource itself. And now that the list is shorter, it is much easier to actually navigate. And if you start looking through the research results, you'll start to see some of the EPA resources, that fact sheets on the Clean Water SNF that were highlighted today. I also mentioned our nationwide calendar earlier, where we display all the water and wastewater related events that we have collected from various organizations. Again, we mainly focus on collecting information on events that offer CEUs, and this tool is meant to help operators have an easier time finding training opportunities compared to having to juggle between various training providers' websites. So you can access the calendar tool by clicking on the events calendar on the menu bar at the top, which will bring you to a new page with an empty calendar and a search function or search filter, similar to the document search tool. You can populate the calendar by selecting appropriate filters. We have category, which are, again, the water and wastewater related topics; type, which are the such a type of events that are available, such as trainings, webinars, conferences; state, which is the state where the event takes place in, or the state that training credits are approved for, if available; and sponsor, which is the organization sponsoring the event. In general, we find that most operators we hear from use a state filter, since for them the priority is just finding events approved within their state. But for this demo, let's say we're looking for events that are more related to financial management, or to the financial management category. Well, we can select category again, like in the documents demo, and select financial management. Once you select that category, it will automatically populate the calendar with various event opportunities. As you can tell just from the screenshot, there are a lot of opportunities coming up in August that are related to financial management. For those listings that don't have a full name, like some of the events shown on like August 13th, 14th, or 15th, normally it will show you the full event name, but if there are too many events or the event name is too long per day, they will shrink the name, so it's easier to look on the calendar. But if you hover over the acronym, organization acronym itself, it will tell you the full event name. So for this example, let's say we're looking for webinar opportunities specifically on financial management topics. We can now select a second filter and select the type to be webinar live online, which will refine our search even more, allowing some of the short event names to now show up fully. And if I look through, I can see that WEF, or Water Environment Federation, is hosting a webinar on unlocking funding. Since I know WEF is an organization closely related to wastewater, and the topic is on funding, this might sound like a webinar that I might be interested in. If you click on the event name, it will open up a new window, which will include much more information about the event. So let's say we clicked on this event name. Now we see that a new window will pop up that has much more information, and we can tell from the details that this webinar covers topics on aging infrastructure, funding allocation, construction management, which sounds like a webinar that really aligns with some of the topics covered today. We try to make sure to display all the relevant information, such as date, location, for in-person events, course details, contact information, and cost, number CUs offered, if the event offered any, so that, again, you can find all the relevant information on a single page. You'll also see the link to the organization's webpage where you can go to register for the specific event. Similar to the document search module, we can search using the keyword filter as well. For this example, let's say you wanted to search for events covering infrastructure funding. We can remove the original filters by clicking on the clear filter option, or the button located under the keywords box, which will then reset your whole calendar view. Then we can enter infrastructure funding as a keyword and select go. Once you do that, the calendar should populate, and we can see much less events as we have used a more refining keyword rather than one of the categories that you can use to search for events. And as you can tell, we can see the WEF event that we just looked at. So if anyone needs help finding certain events or documents, they can always reach out to us as well, and we'll try to help you find the specific event or document they might be looking for. We've had in the past people reach out to us requesting information on, hey, or information like, hey, I want to take this class 2 wastewater certification exam, but my state barely has any free resources. Can you help us find any? And we'll help look for similar certification criteria, certification prep material from other states, or other resources that cover the same material covered in an exam that might be able to help those operators better be prepared for those certification exams. So those are the two tools that are the most popular on our website. I also want to briefly go over some of the other features or tools that you can find on our site as well. First is our blog page where we highlight recent news, where we focus on a single topic and showcase resources related to that topic, which can also be found through our library tool. On the side, there are categories or filters which users can use to filter specific blog posts or blog post topics. One of the topics included is financial management. So if you click on that specific term, it will only show blog posts on financial management topics, just like shown on this screenshot. And again, the blogs are great because we try to stay up to date with new information, um, like new resources that's been developed by other state agencies or federal agencies, anything that's useful for even covering recent news, like recent hacking attempts on some of the PLC equipment that many water and wastewater utility use. Information like that, we'll try to highlight into our blog post. We also have 3 newsletters that we send out monthly or on a biweekly means electronically through this program. The first is our most popular standard water operator biweekly newsletter, which highlights recent news like, again, funding opportunities, upcoming free events, as well as resources relevant to that specific newsletter that are also available on our resource library. We also have the Innovations for Small Systems newsletter, which is our monthly newsletter where we highlight recent news on innovations in water and wastewater management with a focus on small systems as well as recent publications such as research papers or journals. And finally, our third tribal newsletter, which is geared more towards operators of tribal communities. All 3 newsletters covers drinking water and municipal wastewater topics, but whenever there's new funding available, we try to include them all on our newsletters. So on our main WU newsletter, we'll include funding opportunities that are applicable for most water and wastewater systems. For our innovations newsletter, we usually list funding opportunities that are geared more towards pilot studies, research oriented for new treatment technologies. And on our tribal newsletter, we try to highlight funding opportunities that are specific for tribal communities or tribal systems. You can get to our newsletter page through the top menu bar to see our past archives as well as register for any of our newsletters. Though we are currently going through the process of transitioning our newsletter providers, so you might not see our most recent ones, but give it time and we'll get the most recent newsletters on there as well. Finally, I also wanted to announce that we do have a new website similar to waterop.org. It's called decentralizedwastewater.org, and it's also funded through RCAP and US EPA. The website shares similar goals as waterop.org to be a clearinghouse of public available resources, but for on-site professionals. Much of the events and resources searchable on this site is going to be geared more towards septic system installer, designers, soil scientists, and other professionals involved with decentralized wastewater management. With so much federal efforts going on into providing technical assistance to on-site systems or disadvantaged communities with on-site systems, we saw the need to develop a new site to help those on-site professionals be able to search for resources and training events easier. We will also have a monthly newsletter and blog post features on this website as well, focusing on on-site topics and news. So if you're interested about learning more, please have a chance to check our site out and you have us bookmarked or sign up for the newsletter because if those of you looking for financial assistance for on-site systems, we'll be featuring a lot of the information through this website and our newsletters through this program. So that concludes my presentation today. If you get a chance to use waterop.org and do run into any issues or questions, again, please feel free to contact us or contact me or my supervisor, Steve Wilson. Our emails and phone numbers are shown here, but we'll be more than to sit down, help you better understand if you have any questions or help you walk through some of the tutorial or give you a tutorial of how you can, again, navigate our calendar and document library tool. And since a lot of these resources listed today had URLs associated with them, if you want a copy of this presentation so you can access those URLs easier, please send an email to me and I'll be happy to send you a copy of these slides. So yeah, no, I appreciate everyone's time for sitting on this webinar and listening to this presentation. I guess at this point, I'll move on to the Q&A session to see if we have any questions from our audience.
We have not received any questions.
Okay, perfect. Well, not perfect, but I guess we'll give it another minute to see if anyone wants to submit a question through the chat box. Um, Again, the main thing I would say is that for the Clean Water SRF program, definitely reach out to your states or look into your state specific Clean Water SRF program. A lot of times, each individual states will have webinar recordings about the program, but it's going to be geared more towards their state's operators. So it might touch on more of the state specific eligibility, state specific requirements, or state specific eligibilities, and they'll have state specific staff that might be able to answer some of the questions you have. And really, if you have any projects that you might have trouble funding, again, try to look through some of the project eligibilities as well as some of the guys that mentioned sustainable infrastructure, because they will highlight how utilities can assess projects, prioritize projects that again will benefit the most for either maintaining compliance or to protect public health. All right. Well, if we don't have any questions at the moment, I think I'll end the webinar there. If you have any questions, again, feel free to email me. I'll be more than happy to respond back to you. And again, if you would like the copy of the slides, reach out to me and I'll be more than happy to send you a PDF of these slides. Well, thank you so much for everyone's time, and I hope everyone has a nice rest of the day. Thank you all.